Hello and welcome to Post to Post, the channel where we discuss all things hockey and all teams. This is a video I've been waiting a long time to make. I love making predictions. It's one of the most funnest things you can do as a hockey fan is make predictions in the playoffs. So what we've done is we've done a full bracket from round one all the way to the finals. We've each done one, myself, Justin, and then my dad too. So we're going to start with Justin. So Justin, can you take us through your full bracket prediction, please?
Yes. I love the bracket challenge. I look forward to this every single year.
Yeah.
And sometimes you can have a lot of insane surprises, and it's just so much fun to see. So first round, Chicago, Nashville. I've taken Chicago in this series in 6 games. Next up, Minnesota and St. Louis. I've taken St. Louis in 7. So then in the second round, it would be Chicago, St. Louis again.
Mm-hmm.
Next up, Anaheim and Calgary. Now in the previous video, I pegged Anaheim, but gut feeling tells me Calgary in the bracket challenge. I'm taking Calgary. Yeah, I did switch it up. And that's the fun thing about this. I mean, you can switch it up so
it's
quick.
Hard.
So I've taken Calgary in 6 games here in the bracket challenge. And then next up with Edmonton and San Jose, I've taken Edmonton in 6 games. So then we would see Chicago, St. Louis, and Calgary and Edmonton.
That would be amazing.
In the second round.
That would be amazing.
And I would have Edmonton beating Calgary and Chicago beating St. Louis, setting up for the Western Conference final of Chicago and Edmonton, with Chicago beating Edmonton and going on to the Cup final.
Oh, say it ain't so.
I really wouldn't want it to happen, but right now I just don't know if any other team can take down Chicago in the Western Conference. They are that good this year, and they are that deep, and they are that experienced. So off to the East, Montreal and New York. I have Montreal moving on in 5 games. Ottawa and Boston, I have Boston moving on in 6 games. So that would set up another amazing second round matchup with Montreal and Boston. You know, can you imagine Calgary and Edmonton and Montreal and Boston in the second round?
Yeah.
Wow, that is magic. Washington and Toronto, I have Washington over Toronto in 4 games. Pittsburgh and Columbus, I have Pittsburgh beating them in 6 games. So then the second round would be Washington, Pittsburgh, and Montreal, Boston. So you could tell this bracket challenge is all from the heart, because man, I would love to see these matchups. Oh, these matchups are money to me. So I have Montreal beating Boston in the second round, going on to the Eastern Conference final, and Pittsburgh beating Washington again and going on to face Montreal in the Eastern Conference finals, and Pittsburgh beating Montreal and going back to the Cup final to take on the Chicago Blackhawks.
Wow.
So that's a mouthful right there.
That is a mouthful.
So I then have Pittsburgh beating Chicago in the Cup final and winning back-to-back Stanley Cups. This is all from the heart, but statistically speaking, I do not believe there is a more deep team in the NHL than the Pittsburgh Penguins. All 4 lines can be lethal. And right now, that team is almost 100% intact from last year. So to me, they are the most experienced team in the entire NHL. And right now, they're going in on all cylinders, minus a few key injuries. You know, a guy like Letang, that's big. But they do have a lot of guys returning for the start of the playoffs. So to me, they are the team to beat. But I don't feel anyone will be able to do it. And they're going to go all the way again.
Well, I so badly want to disagree with you, but I think you're right. The Penguins do have a very good chance at getting back to the finals. And it's, like I said, I hope you're wrong.
I hope I'm right.
Because I really don't want to watch Pittsburgh anymore in the playoffs. I like to see new blood. So I respect your opinion, but I don't like it. I don't like it at all.
Well, hey, as long as we get Calgary and Edmonton in the second round, that's a win to me.
Yeah, definitely.
I want to see that matchup so badly.
All right, so let's move on to my prediction bracket. And I will say, I think I've done this consistently in the last probably 6 to 7 years. I've never once been right, not even close. So I know that based on what I pick, the opposite will probably happen. So here's what I have. So Chicago versus Nashville. I think this is going to be the biggest upset of the entire playoffs. I think Nashville is going to take out Chicago in 7 games. Moving on, Minnesota versus St. Louis. I think Minnesota is going to get it done in 6. And moving on to Anaheim versus Calgary. I really, really want Calgary to win, but I think Anaheim's going to take it in 7. And then Edmonton versus San Jose. I I think I'd be okay with anyone who won this series, but I really do think that Edmonton's going to win this series in 6. So that brings me on to the second round in the West. So we have Nashville versus Minnesota. And I think Nashville is going to take out Minnesota and move on to the Western Conference Finals. And Anaheim versus Edmonton. I have Anaheim over Edmonton, which leaves us with Nashville versus Anaheim. And this is definitely not a want situation here. I don't want to see Anaheim go this far, but I will say that Anaheim beats Nashville in the conference finals and moves on to the Stanley Cup Finals. Again, not what I want at all. I'm not a huge fan of Anaheim, but let's move on to the Eastern Conference. So we have Montreal versus the Rangers, and this is a series I could really see going either way, but I'm going to give it to Montreal in 6. Next up, we have Ottawa versus Boston. I think this is going to be a really hard-fought series. I think Boston's going to take this one in 7. And moving on, Washington versus Toronto. It would be nice to see Toronto, slay Goliath, but I really think Washington has it here. Sorry, Toronto fans, but I think Washington's going to get this done in 5. And lastly, Pittsburgh and Columbus. This is going to be another hard-fought series. 2 great teams going at it. And I think Columbus is going to pull through and take out Pittsburgh in 7. Sorry to say.
No.
Moving on to the second round, so we got Montreal versus Boston. Statistically, Boston has an absolutely terrible record against Montreal in the playoffs. It's kind of outstanding, really. They just have a hard time for whatever reason beating Montreal in the playoffs. So I have to give this one to Montreal. And then Washington versus Columbus. If you look up the statistics, 2 side by side, Washington beats Columbus in every single category, every single important category, that is. So I'm going to give it to Washington here. They move on to the conference finals versus Montreal, and Washington absolutely slaughters Montreal, probably in 4 games straight. I don't think Montreal would win a single game against Washington. So Washington, Anaheim in the Stanley Cup Finals. Now this is where things get real difficult for me, because I so badly want to see Washington beat Anaheim in the finals. I'd love to see Ovi get a cup, but I don't think they're going to do it. I think Anaheim is going to beat Washington in the finals and win their second franchise cup, I believe. Yeah, their second cup, because they did it in 2007? Around there.
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah. So, yeah, Anaheim is the winner for me. So, 2 very different brackets between us, and, I don't want to see Anaheim win the cup, but like I said at the beginning, I'm always wrong. So with that said, I know Anaheim's not going to win the Stanley Cup, so that makes me happy.
You just jinxed them 100%.
Yeah, I just jinxed them 100%.
One, actually, 2 things that stood out from your bracket was we both took Montreal to go to the Eastern Conference Final, and we both wrote off Toronto completely.
Yeah, and again, for me,
Toronto.
I want to see Toronto go to the second round.
Oh, I would love to see it.
My bracket's not based on want; it's just what I think. I'd actually like to see Toronto move on to the second, maybe even the third round. But I think that might be a little bit unlikely. So, like I said, Dad, he did his own bracket video for us, so let's check that out now.
Neil's asked me to come on and explain my brackets that I've loaded into the NHL Bracket Challenge and made part of the Post to Post team here. Firstly, all my first round picks are done as part of the videos that you've been watching this week. Some of them you've seen, maybe some of them you haven't seen yet, but I've made all of my predictions, and they are as follows. On the West, I have Chicago defeating Nashville in the first round, and I have that happening in 6 games. Also, I have the St. Louis Blues beating Minnesota in 7 games. I have the Anaheim Ducks beating Calgary, unfortunately, probably quickly, in 5 games. And I have the Edmonton Oilers getting past the San Jose Sharks in 6 games. In the West, that sets up Chicago versus St. Louis, which I think Chicago will win. And also Edmonton versus Anaheim, and I think Edmonton hangs on and wins that series too to set up a Chicago-Edmonton Western Conference Final. Over in the East, I have the Pittsburgh Penguins defeating the Columbus Blue Jackets in 5 games. I have Washington beating Toronto in 5 games. I have Boston needing 7 games to get past Ottawa, and I'm predicting my Montreal Canadiens to defeat the New York Rangers in 6 games. In the second series in the East, it'll be Montreal facing off against Boston. Frankly, I think if they still have a healthy Carey Price, Montreal can beat Boston and can beat them going away. I don't think the series will be that stressful for the Montreal Canadiens, and I see that happening in 5 or 6 games. In the other series, Pittsburgh versus Washington, I think the Pittsburgh Penguins will tough that out. It might take 7 games to do it, but I think it's going to set up Pittsburgh and Montreal to be in the Eastern Conference Final. Now, as far as what will happen after that, in the West, Chicago playing against Edmonton. I think Edmonton's Cinderella run through the playoffs this year, if it gets that far, will likely end in Chicago. And I think the Blackhawks will probably win and advance once again to the Stanley Cup Finals, a place that they're very familiar with in the last several years. In the East, again, my predictions are partly based on my emotional attachment to Montreal, and they're partially based on my theory and my belief that the Canadiens will somehow find a way to keep Carey Price healthy throughout the playoffs. If Carey Price is a healthy goalie throughout the entire playoffs, Montreal can go as far as he can take them, and I think that is all the way. If Carey Price is healthy in the Pittsburgh series, in the Eastern Conference Finals, then I think Montreal can win that series, just like they beat Pittsburgh a few years ago, although that was with Halak and not Price. But I think the other ingredients are there for Montreal to defeat Pittsburgh, setting up a Montreal-Chicago final. It'll be Marc Bergevin's present team against the team that he built several years ago. He'll know both teams very well. I don't know who would win that series. Of course, I have a preference, and I guess for the purposes of showing this bracket, I will pick Montreal, because it'll have been 25 years since they won the Cup, or 24 this year, and it's time. Chicago has had the Cup a few times in the last several years, so perhaps they don't need one this year as badly, certainly, as Montreal does. So my prediction in the NHL Bracket Challenge, Montreal having a parade on Sherbrooke Street in June, and if that happens, I'm going to be there.
So as we were making this video, I haven't watched Dad's video, so I don't actually know who he picked. So I'm looking forward to seeing it, and I hope you guys enjoyed that. So you've heard from us all. You've heard our bracket challenge, and we're having a little competition over on bracketchallenge.nhl.com, I believe is the URL. And our group is called Post to Post space YouTube, and the password is YouTube with a capital Y and a capital T. If there's still time left and you can join, definitely join that. It's a fun little competition between all of us here. So if this is your first video, I hope you hit the subscribe button and join us here at Post to Post. And if you like this video, hit the like button as well. Any closing comments on this bracket situation?
I can't wait to see how wrong I am, to be honest. I really go from the heart with this, but not fully, because, if I did go from the heart, I'd like to see Toronto take out Washington. But, geez, everything is just against Toronto in this series. So, you got to take Washington. But it's going to be interesting to see, is all I can say. But, I'm already kind of second guessing a few already. It's just the way it is.
Yeah, me too, actually.
Yeah. So
crazy stuff. All right, well, this kind of wraps up our playoff preview. I think this will be our last playoff preview video, and this is our 8th or 9th video we filmed tonight. So it's been a long night, and there's going to be a lot of hard work going into making these videos possible and get them out on time. So this may be the last video on the channel for a couple days. I think we might take a couple day break, but otherwise we'll be back in a couple days after you see this video for some more hopefully exciting and entertaining content. So thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you in the next video. Adios.